And what Jacobson, and members of our choir. If unable, we invite you to leave your video cameras on so that your fellow congregants can see you just as they would if you were physically present. There will be a time in our service when you will all be unmuted briefly to say good morning to one another. We are currently streaming on Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube. Our service is recorded and will be made available for future viewing on Facebook, YouTube, and the church website. Let your Facebook and Twitter friends know that you're attending worship with hashtag First Unitarian Hobart. Now let's all take a deep breath and another and join together in a spirit of reverence while we listen to the prelude played by Jeremy Jacobson.
We come to the point of the service for lighting our chalice. We have words from The Promise and the Practice by Adrian Graham. We kindle a flame of power, illuminating the holy in each of our faces. We recognize in the flame a passionate commitment to our shared faith. We are held and carried from day to day, week to week, in the shining of the light. This flame is mine as well as yours. We are brought together on this day, called to grow to expansion within its glow. What does your heart know while beholding this holy fire? Our opening reading is Across a Great Divide by Reverend Alicia Roxanne Ford. It feels like we are eyeing one another across a great divide. A divide I sometimes call class, race, ethnocentricity, theological perspective, and its implications for how we practice, how we live, and how we be. If you be you and I be me, if we speak truth in love, with love, if we act related with integrity, if we unite our spirits, open and aching and whole and wanting and giving, then the work we engage, the communities we create, the power of who we can be, holds a great promise, a great hope for us and our wider communities. And this matters.
Please join me in singing the opening hymn, number 113, Where is Our Holy Church? The words will be printed on your screen.
Where is our holy church, where race and class unite, as equal persons
Please join me in reading the affirmation of faith. The words are printed on your screen. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament. Service is its prayer, and this is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
We now will have our greeting. Everyone will be unmuted for a few seconds to say a collective good morning.
Good morning,
Good
everyone.
morning.
Good
Morning.
morning. Have a beautiful day.
Good morning.
Hello, everyone.
Good to see you all.
Good morning to everyone.
Morning, everyone. We now will play our doxology.
Now is the time in the service when we have the story for the child in each of us. This one is a little bit long. I hope you enjoy it. Jim and I are going to take turns reading the parts. This is the story for all ages. It's called Beautiful Hands by Barb Pittman. She was bewildered and ashamed. The other hands in the classroom were smooth with nails cleanly cut. Hands raised to answer the teacher's question. Hands engaged in the age-old art of spitball forming. Hands writing on the blackboard. They all seemed so new, so unused, so beautiful. May hid her hands. In kindergarten, she hid them under the table. In first grade, she hid them under the table. In second grade, third grade, and even fourth grade, she hid her hands in this way. Winters were always easier thanks to Grandma's handmade mittens, colorful and bold, decorated with baby ducks, and later with purple and blue stripes. The mittens meant May felt no shame walking to school, carrying books and lunch for herself and her sister. Exclamations like, "Oh, how beautiful," and "I wish my grandma would make some mittens with stripes," stirred up hopes inside May. And for a brief moment, she would tell herself she was one of them, for they would forget her hands and remember instead her beautiful mittens.
Back in the classroom, May would catch someone looking in her direction and shove her hands back under the desk. She never raised her hand, never applauded with excitement. She wrote in hurried strokes of the pencil so as not to have her hands in full view for very long. One day she was walking through the school hallway with her hands shoved into her pants pockets. In the hallway that day, she saw a poster for an art class. It was a special art class. It was going to be taught by her favorite teacher, and each student was going to be able to learn to draw and paint. She signed her name on the poster, and all the way home, she thought about the kind of art project she might make. Her mom worked all night long while she watched her younger sister, and she thought maybe mom would like a pretty picture to look at when she got home from work. She also thought about how tired mom was during the day, trying to sleep while the rest of the world was awake. And May thought she might make a do not disturb sign for the front door. And then she remembered her beautiful mittens and thought she might draw a pattern to send to Grandma so Grandma could make new mittens, even some for her sister. As soon as May got home, she sat her sister Kate at the kitchen table for a snack. As she did the breakfast dishes and tried to keep Kate quiet so they would not wake up Mom, May thought of all the wonderful art projects she could try. May was so busy planning her project, she forgot about her hands. She finished the dishes, got out the mop to clean up the milk that didn't quite make it to Kate's mouth, and chopped potatoes for dinner. Mom was up by now and was rushing out the door to get to work. Mom kissed May on the head, told the girls she loved them so much, and went off to work.
There we go. May helped Kate with her bath, tucked her into bed, made up Mom's bed, and vacuumed the front room. After doing her homework, May went to bed and dreamt of being a famous artist. Everyone in town marveled at her beautiful paintings. She won awards from her school and even got to give a speech in front of the governor. When May woke up, she went to bed, excited about the art class. As she braided Kate's hair, she saw her hands and suddenly realized she could not paint or draw without the other children seeing her hands. She could not get Kate ready fast enough and practically pulled her all the way to school. May ran to the hallway to cross her name off the poster. It was not there. The poster and the sign-up sheet were gone. She went to class and told her teacher she needed to drop out of the art class. The teacher said she would have to go to the art class and tell the art teacher that she was no longer interested in the class.
When May went to the art class that day, she tried to get the teacher's attention, but there were so many other children in the class and such a lot of noise that May decided she would wait until after the class to talk to the art teacher. After the teacher got the class to quiet down, she talked a little bit about drawing things, how important it was to draw what you saw, even if no one else saw the same thing. She said they would eventually draw their pets and maybe even a family member, but that their first lesson was to draw their own hand. May was stunned and tried her very best not to cry in front of the other children. Though there were many things she wanted to draw, her hand was certainly not one of them. Still, she did her best, though she was ashamed to even look at the rough redness around her nails. She had little bumps on her palms, and the lines in her hands reminded her of Grandma's hands. May finished her drawing and left as quickly as possible, even before the teacher had collected the hand pictures and told them what they would be doing the next day. The following morning, May was determined to tell the art teacher she could not take the class anymore. When she got to art class, the teacher talked about all the wonderful hand drawings she had gathered from their desks the day before. The art teacher laughed about the hand drawing that showed pink and purple dotted fingernails. She laughed about the hand that had diamond rings on every finger and 4 diamond rings on the thumb. Then she held up a hand drawing that was familiar to May. It showed a small hand with fingers curled towards the palm as if holding a precious stone or delicate butterfly. May shoved her hands under the desk and waited to crawl under there to hide along with her hands.
The teacher said, "Of all the hand drawings I saw yesterday, this is the one I could not stop looking at. This is an interesting drawing, a beautiful drawing, for it shows a hand that is not idle. It shows a hand that has worked hard. The fingers are curved as to protect something fragile." She walked to May's desk and asked May, "Could I please see her hand?" May did not want to show her hand, but being accustomed to obeying teachers, she pulled her hand out from under the desk. The teacher took May's hand into her own. "Now," said the teacher, "as I hold in my own hand the hand from this drawing, I can see that I was not wrong. It is a hand that has caressed little kittens and held small daisies. It is a hand that has washed many dishes, folded laundry, given baths, and combed hair. Yes, this is a very interesting hand. It is a beautiful." With that, the teacher went back and started talking about that afternoon's drawing assignment.
After class, May ran all the way home, dragging Kate part of the way and carrying her the rest of the way. She put the drawing on Mom's bed, and with her rough red hands, she washed the dishes, fixed dinner, bathed Kate, and finished her homework. As she lay down in bed, she noticed that the glow from the moon was shining on her hands. They looked different tonight. May thought of the many dishes and counters she washed when Mom was sleeping. She thought of the time she had bathed her sister and cleaned up the house when Mom was at work. She thought about the way her palm fit over Kate's cheek and how wonderful her sister's skin felt to her hand. She remembered the tender kisses Mommy gave her hands when she came home from work in the dark hours of the early morning. She would hear her mommy say, "Thank you, May, for all your help. I could not do this without you." Just as the little girl with the red, rough hands was starting to nod off, she looked one more time at her hands, and she smiled, for they really were most interesting hands.
Unable to gather in person, this congregation expresses our greatest joys and deepest sorrows in new ways. We believe that a joy shared is magnified and a sorrow shared is diminished. We pause, listening to what arises from within our hearts. Type in the chat box any joys or concerns you have. Your joys and concerns are not made public and are not recorded. If that, we lift up these joys and sorrows, including those too tender to mention.
Our next reading is from Cabbagetown by Reverend Karen Hutt. My mom said it would be a short drive to my cousin's house because she would take a shortcut through Cabbagetown just outside Atlanta. As I looked out the window, searching for cabbages along the highway, I saw long row homes on sandy red clay. I saw an old mill and lots of old cars, and men milling about and women standing around them, and children playing in red dirt. This was the first time that I laid eyes on these kind of people, and my curiosity kept my head pressed against the window in the back seat. It was late, and my dad was finishing up work at his office in Philadelphia, downtown, and a man came up to him on Broad Street with tousled blonde hair and asked him if he could spare some change. I was stunned that this man was asking my father for money. I stared at him, very disappointed, and mostly disappointed at my father, as he gave him the loose change in his pocket that I had begged for just an hour earlier. As the man walked away, I stared at him curiously, wondering why this man was a beggar. My great-grandfather, whose father was an enslaved person, liked to tell stories. One day he was telling us a story about something, and he looked to all the adults in the room and said, "Well, you know, they ain't nothing but poor white trash." And everybody chuckled, and I laughed hard along, even though I didn't know what I was laughing at until years later in South Boston, Massachusetts.
There, I was working with white youth living in public housing. One afternoon, I went into the home of one of the kids who was having a tough time, and I wanted to meet Mom. His mom welcomed me in, and she directs me to sit down. I look down and see I am about to sit on the whole front seat of a Mustang that was serving as a couch. I sat down very carefully, as if traveling in a foreign land, waiting for some special cues. If I should sit in a certain way, in this chair, this couch that I've never seen, how could I guide my moves in this strange place I had landed? These were the people I brushed up against, drove by, heard about, and wondered about. These were the other white people. These were the white people that I and everyone around me had nothing but disdain for. They were the butt of our jokes as we watched the Beverly Hillbillies and Hee Haw as kids. Later, they morphed into Honey Boo Boo and Duck Dynasty, and they became sort of pop culture junk food for me and my friends as we drank craft beer at art openings. This was one group of people that my upper middle class friends and I could all agree on, that we were better than them. Now comes the time for our sermon. Our speakers are both members of our church, Carl Wolf and Steve Midmore. Steve will be the first speaker.
Okay, can you hear me? I want to make sure I'm unmuted here. When Maggie asked me to do this service and she sent me the outline, I looked at the outline and it said I was supposed to speak about class. Now, I thought about that, and what does class actually mean? Well, I have it. I'm a classy guy, at least I think so. It could mean the grade 12 class in Chesterton High School, but we're really talking social class. I have to tell a story here. I worked 10 years or more in North Lake County in Gary. And when I went to Gary, everybody was friendly. And they would wave and say, "Hi, how are you doing?" And a couple of young people actually high-fived me. And naturally, I said, "Gee, this is a friendly place," and I wanted to know why. And my first thought was, it's got to be my good looks, but it wasn't that. My second thought was it was my sartorial skills and my wonderful ability to accessorize, but it wasn't that either. I realized that I have a habit that a lot of people don't. I look at things. I look at sunsets, I look at sunrises, I look at people, I look at flowers, I look, and I don't look away, at least not at first. And in the Black community, people are used to having people looking away. Black people are used to having white people not look at them. And when you're not seen, you don't exist. Now, we can all fail to see. Sometimes this is deliberate. Most of the time it's instinctual. We don't even realize we're doing it. We all look away on occasion. I'm going to demonstrate how this occurs. You are around in a room and you see somebody doing this, or they're doing this. Or if you're in a close environment and it's impolite for them to look away, they sort of get that gobsmacked look with a look on their face that is totally blank, like this. Out of focus, you're not seen. They don't look down, actually, because that's a submission move. Now, collectively, if people do this to you all the time, that means you are beneath contempt, a nobody, and you don't exist. We do not see Black folk, a lot of white people. We don't see the poor. We don't see the dispossessed. And they live around us, and we don't see them. There's a whole strata and a layer of culture and things that we just most of the time do not see. And as I said earlier, Black folk are used to going to a mall that has lots of white people in it, and they're used to not having any of us whiteys, look at them. Now, I'm going to change the focus a little bit here and move on to something a little different, because part of the focus of this sermon is things that happened to me in the last 2 weeks, actually. I went and I saw Nomadland. It's a great movie. I think it's one of the best movies I have ever seen. It ranks up there with Bambi, Marty, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, and Old Yeller, and you can't get any better than those. But the point I'm going to make is that the people seen are here and around us, and everybody in the movie, basically, this is a whole group of people that are the unseen. Personally, the movie was shot in the upper Midwest, and I've been to the South Dakota Badlands. I didn't see them there. The North Dakota Potato Campaign, and I didn't see them there. And Wall Drug, and I didn't see them there either. Those people were there, but I just did not see them. What does this mean? Well, I'm going to use two biblical situations here. The first one is from Matthew, and it's the Good Samaritan. And the Pharisee and the Sadducee walked on the opposite side of the road so that they did not have to look. The man that was beaten and bleeding was not seen by them. I will paraphrase another quote from the Bible. I didn't look it up, and I apologize for that. That says basically, those that have eyes, let them see, and those who have ears, let them hear. We're not immune. Nobody in this church is immune. In our church are not those that were hurt by the flag incident now unseen today. Haven't heard from them lately. The bottom line on all of this is that being unseen hurts. And how much does it hurt? Well, I'm going to give you the second thing that occurred to me in the recent 2 weeks. All of you married men have been through days like this. You know the wife imperative, when she sends you out for the door and you have to go get it no matter what. And I was sent out the door to get gnocchi. Now, I had trouble finding gnocchi. I went to 2, 3 supermarkets, and in the third one, I finally found 2 packages of gnocchi. And it was an odd hour. There was only one checkout line, and I got in the line at the supermarket. And in front of me was a young black man, slim, good looking, conservatively dressed. And he had a huge cart of everything that he was processing. Now I'm standing behind him and I'm happy to wait. If for no other reason, if I got home too early, my wife would send me out for something else. And he's loading all his stuff in the cart, and he's got everything paid for, and he's at the end of the checkout line, and he's got this cart full of everything. And he sort of glances back at me. The contact was 2 seconds, maybe. We had eye contact. I shrugged. I'm happy to be in the line because if I get home too early, I'll just be sent out again. And he fills his cart, turns around, walks behind me, goes to the clerk at the counter and pays for my gnocchi. And I have some reflections on this. The first is I don't like gnocchi. Anything that starts with a G and followed by an N, I think is, well, not good. The second thing is I like to look after myself. And I was going to object to his gesture of paying for my food. But I realized that it was more important for him to pay than it was for me to object, so I thanked him. Now, the point of all of this is if you're ignored, you're a non-person, you're not existing. The movie Nomadland is about an entire group of people that don't exist. What does it mean to just get that little look that I gave this young man in passing? My look and shrug meant that much to him that he had to pay for my food again. So I'm going to go to the last words here. Look, see, and respect. Look around. See the other, the unseen. And respect. Remember, they're human too. It can mean a lot. A simple look and a shrug in a second meant a lot to a man that I've never seen before and will never see again. I'm not at all sure that the most important thing we need from each other is just that respect. Thank you. If I said too much, I went on too long, I apologize. Back to you.
Thanks, Steve. You guys can hear me fine? Yes, very good, thank you. So when I travel, I like to stop a lot and engage with people in the communities where I end up. I look to strike up a conversation with the gas station attendant or the people working the farm stand or with the person sitting next to me at the bar. Who are they? You know, what do they do? What are their opinions? On one trip, I was sitting next to a woman at a bar in Shelbyville, Kentucky, who, as we were talking, she started showing me pictures of a deer that she had killed the previous weekend. And, you know, to me, that's like, whoa, I've never gone hunting in my life. So that was amazing. She had no opinions on politics and she had never voted in her life. In November 2021, I took another trip. And as I pulled into downtown Indianapolis for my first stop, I started getting texts that at that exact moment, Biden had won. And I saw Trump supporters gathering for a rally, and I parked and I went to, you know, kind of walk back and forth through the crowd, observing and taking pictures. And I happened to be wearing a pro-communist T-shirt, but no one said anything to me. Maybe they were too much in shock, not believing what they were saying. What's this guy doing? Later on the trip, I stopped at a produce mart in Cave City, Kentucky, near Mammoth Cave, and the clerk asked where I was from. I said, oh, I'm from Northwest Indiana. It's an industrial area, a lot of steel. And he assumed that Northwest Indiana would be pro-Trump, but I told him no, that Biden got 60% of the vote in Lake County. And I told him that I was more of an AOC Biden, Bernie type. You know, I figured something a little bit more palatable or something that's more common instead of going full out radical on him. So he asked about the rioting during the George Floyd protests, and I told him that the rioting was secondary to the legitimate anger and pain that people were experiencing. So he took that as food for thought. He was a Trump voter, mainly because of his stance on abortion. You know, I love people. We are wonderful creatures. We're full of compassion, humor, good times. We're full of bad times. And coming to this church for the last 10 years has taught me that as a communist, I claim love. I claim it. As Che Guevara wrote, at the risk, as he said, at the risk of seeming ridiculous, let me say that the true revolutionary is guided by great feelings of love. It is impossible to think of a genuine revolutionary lacking this quality. We must idealize this love of the people, of the most sacred causes, and make it one and indivisible. We must strive every day so that this love of living humanity is transformed into actual deeds, into acts that serve as examples, as a moving force. And yet, we live in a system that rejects the love of a living humanity. We are faced with and witness toxicity and oppression every day. Some of our political leaders pander to hatred, conspiracy, and hysteria, blowing the dog whistle of racism, anti-immigrant sentiment, and populist fascism. The number of hate crimes were at an 11-year high of 7,314 in 2019. Other political leaders have been integral in the creation of a criminal justice system where Blacks are 6 times more likely to end up incarcerated than whites. And the white working class, the deplorables, the people that I meet and talk to on my travels, they feel abandoned, whether the sentiment is legitimate or not. So Black, white, Hispanic, Native American, Asian, the working class, we are not served by the fascist populists or the liberal elites. Racism and poverty exist because of our profit system and is exacerbated by the policies of government officials, be they Democrat or Republicans. So yesterday was May Day, the International Workers' Holiday. I had the pleasure of going on a May Day march in Little Village with red flags waving. I'd like to read a portion of Vladimir Lenin's 1904 May Day greeting. He said, "Comrade Unitarians." Oh, no, he didn't. I'm sorry, not Comrade Unitarians. He said, "Comrades, May Day is coming, the day when the workers of all lands celebrate their awakening to a class-conscious life, their solidarity in the struggle against all coercion and oppression of man by man, the struggle to free the toiling millions from hunger, poverty, and humiliation. 2 worlds stand facing each other in this great struggle, the world of capital and the world of labor, the world of exploitation and slavery, and the world of brotherhood and freedom. On one side stand the rich. They have seized the factories and mills, the tools and machinery, have turned millions of acres of land and mountains of money into their private property. They have made the government and the army their servants, faithful watchdogs of the wealth they have amassed. But on the other hand, stand the millions of the disinherited. They are forced to beg the money bags for permission to work for them. By their labor, they create all wealth, yet all their lives long, they have to struggle for a crust of bread, beg for work as for charity, sap their strength and health by back-breaking toil, and starve in the hovels, in the villages, or in the cellars and garrets of the big cities. We strive for a system of society where the wealth created by the common labor will go to benefit not a handful of rich men, but all those who work. We want to make the land and the factories, mills, and machines the common property of all toilers. We want to do away with the division between rich and poor. We want the fruits of labor to go to the laborers themselves, and all the wonderful achievements of the human mind, all the improvements in ways of working to improve the lot of the man and woman who works and not serve as a means of oppressing them. Let the celebration of May Day win thousands of our cause and swell our forces in the great struggle for the freedom of all people, for the liberation of all who toil, and from the yoke of capital. So in 2013, I was at GA, and I was part of a communist group that wrote a pamphlet on the 7 principles. So I'll read a section of that. It's from 2013, so some of the references are going to be dated. The progressive aspirations of Unitarian Universalists are codified in the 7 principles. They are achievable, but not under capitalism. Take these 4 principles as an example. The inherent worth and dignity of every person. Despite endless heroic struggles to reform it, capitalism has been destroying the lives of working people for 5 centuries. Often this takes the form of mass destruction, as it did this spring in Dhaka, Bangladesh. Some of you may remember this. In their relentless push for profit, garment factory workers forced employees, mainly women, to work in a dangerous building by threatening to withhold their $37 a month paychecks. The building collapsed and killed 1,127 workers. The same sexism used to sell women's fashions abetted the mass death of women in Bangladesh. To stay competitive, capitalism imposes wage, pension, and health benefit cuts, layoffs, speed ups, unpaid overtime, whatever it takes to keep them profitable. We often attribute low wages and unhealthy or unsafe working conditions to the greed of individual bosses. But in fact, it's the laws of capitalist development that undermine the worth and dignity of working people. The principle justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. In the 17th century, John Locke claimed that society was the product of a social contract among isolated individuals. But in fact, human beings evolved through cooperation and production, beginning with hunting and gathering. In today's society, every individual is a member of one of two classes: the small group of people who own and control the means of production, and the much larger group who creates value through our work. Where is the justice in exploiting workers and profiting from their labor? Where is the equity in racist and sexist wage differentials? Is it equitable when millions, hundreds of millions the world over suffer from unemployment despite the desperate need for education, healthcare, home construction, infrastructure repair, pollution abatement? Is there compassion for workers? Layoffs, pay cuts, importation of cheap products from starvation wage countries? Workers immigrate to the United States and Europe where they are criminalized and forced to accept substandard pay. Justice, equity, and compassion, something that we strive for as Unitarians, are under siege by capitalist social relations. The goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. I forget the numbers of these principles, excuse me. I should know them. No matter your age, you have not lived one day of your life in a world without war. Since around 1900, the beginning of the era of monopoly capitalism, imperialist powers have fought endless wars to seize territory and access to labor. The Obama administration, again, this is back in 2012, the Obama administration is presiding over a pivot to Asia, a move to line up allies and prepare for conflict with China. If an all-out war erupted between the US and China, it would involve nuclear weapons and result in tens of millions of fatalities. War is the ultimate expression of capitalist competition. It is the ultimate solution to the capitalist crisis of overproduction. Through war, capitalism destroys excess productive capacity. To achieve world community with peace, as we all strive for as Unitarians, we must fight to end capitalist rule. And the last one, I think this is the seventh principle, the interdependent web of all existence of which we are part. So most of us try to live green to some extent. Meanwhile, millions of pounds of carbon per second are poured into the atmosphere, mainly through unnecessarily dirty power plants and factories. The stated goal of the 2012 UN Climate Change Conference was not to reverse global warming, but merely to slow it down, and it even failed to reach agreement on that. Why? Because the attendees all represented a capitalist class that places profits over the health of the atmosphere or of people like us. Now, this is all very dire, but we hold our principles dear and true, and we want our principles to be achieved. And so I believe that there's great hope every Sunday and throughout the week when we do our good work to achieve these principles. But we must have an alternative. We must work together to fight for a world based on production for use, not for profit, on equality, not privilege, on cooperation, not getting ahead. How else can we turn the aspirations in the UU principles into reality? Thank you.
Thank you, Carl, and thank you, Steve. We now come to the point of the service for our offering, our virtual offering. While the music plays, you're invited to make a monetary offering. The offering link you see on your screen is not clickable. However, the link will be posted in the chat box. You can make an offering anytime after the service at this link as well, or by mailing a check to the church. For your prayers, your presence, your service, and your gifts, we are truly grateful. Please join me in singing hymn 1017, Building a New Way. The words are printed on your screen.
Now it's time for our closing words. The first section is from our time from the UN Earth Charter. Let ours be a time remembered for the awakening of a new reverence for life, the firm resolve to achieve sustainability, the quickening of the struggle for justice and peace, and the joyful celebration of life. And from James 1, adapted by Tony Vincent, be ye doers of the word and not merely hearers, those who look into the perfect law of liberty and persevere, being not hearers who forget, but doers who act. May you be blessed in your doing. May you find the way and the courage to realize the dream that still lives within you. Amen and blessed be. Please join me in extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Amen and blessed be. Go in peace and wellness. Please join us for our virtual coffee hour as we continue our discussions. Thank you for all the participants in today's service.